I was married for 4 years before I found out the truth. 27 people inside my father's company, all of them put there by one woman, my mother-in-law. And the marriage I had fought to save was the very thing that had been destroying my family all along.
Welcome to Haely Stories. This is the place where you will find real and emotional women's stories that will touch your heart, make you feel seen, and remind you that you are never alone in what you are going through. If that is something you need in your life, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a single story. Now, let me tell you what happened when I discovered that the woman who called me her daughter-in-law had been using me as a weapon against my own family.
My name is Fiona, and I am 30 years old. I want to start by telling you something about my father, because without understanding him, you cannot really understand this story. My father, Marcus, built his company from nothing, truly from nothing. He started it in a rented office with secondhand furniture and one employee, which was himself, when he was 27 years old. By the time I was a teenager, it had grown into a mid-sized logistics firm with over 100 employees and contracts that took years of careful relationship building to secure. My father was not a flashy man. He did not talk about money. He did not talk about the company constantly the way some business owners do, making it the center of every conversation. He just worked, quietly, consistently, with a kind of steadiness that I grew up admiring without fully understanding until much later. I grew up watching my father treat his employees like people. He knew their names. He knew their children's names. When someone on his team went through something hard, he found ways to help without making them feel small for needing it. That company was not just a business to him. It was something he had built with his hands and his integrity and 30 years of showing up. I am telling you this because what happened to that company and what I did not see happening for 4 years is the thing I will have to live with for a long time. My name is Fiona. I am 30 years old, and I married the wrong man. I met Nathan when I was 25 years old at a work conference I almost did not attend. He was charming in the way that some men are charming, the way that makes you feel like the most interesting person in the room, even when you know logically that cannot possibly be true. He was tall, well-dressed, and he had this quality of complete attention that I had never experienced before. When Nathan looked at you, he looked at you like nothing else existed. I will admit it plainly, completely swept away. We dated for a year. He was attentive and thoughtful, and he made me laugh. And he genuinely seemed to love me. My friends liked him. My father was cautious, the way fathers are, but he was never unkind to Nathan. He gave him a chance because I asked him to. The first time I met Nathan's mother, Eleanor, I remember thinking she was one of the most elegant women I had ever seen. Perfectly put together. Warm smile, excellent manners. She welcomed me into her home with a graciousness that felt genuine. I liked her immediately. That is the part that stays with me. That is the part I have had to sit with the longest. I liked her immediately. Nathan and I married when I was 26. It was a beautiful wedding. My father danced with me and whispered that he just wanted me to be happy. And I told him I was. And I believed it. In that moment, I completely believed it. The early months of marriage were good. Or they seemed good. Looking back now, I understand that I was looking at everything through a lens I had chosen because I wanted it to be true. I wanted the marriage I had imagined. I wanted the family I thought I was joining. Eleanor was present in our lives from the beginning. That was the first thing I told myself was fine. when part of me quietly noted it was not entirely fine. She called Nathan every day. She had opinions about where we lived, how we decorated, what we ate at family dinners. She was never rude about it. She framed everything as helpfulness, as love, as a mother who simply cared. Nathan never pushed back on her. Not once. In 4 years of marriage, I never saw my husband tell his mother no about anything. But I told myself that was just how their family worked. I told myself I was being too sensitive. I told myself a lot of things that I no longer believe. The first time Eleanor mentioned my father's company was about 8 months into the marriage. She brought it up over dinner, casually. She said she had a friend who was looking for work in logistics and asked if my father might consider meeting with her. I said I would mention it. I did not think anything of it. Over the next 2 years, Eleanor made similar requests 11 more times. I counted them later. 11. A former colleague looking for a position, a young man she mentored who needed experience in operations, a woman from her community who was excellent with accounts, she said, and just needed an opportunity. Every single time, she framed it as a favor, as generosity on my father's part, as an opportunity for someone who deserved a chance. And every single time, I passed the request along to my father. Because Eleanor was my mother-in-law, because she had been kind to me, because I did not want to be the person who refused reasonable requests from family. My father hired most of them, because I asked, because he trusted me, because he had spent 30 years building a company on the belief that people deserved chances. I did not know what I was doing. I want to make that very clear because I have spent a long time being angry at myself about this, and I have had to work very hard to separate what I knew from what I was told, and what I did intentionally from what I did in complete innocence. I did not know what I was doing, but Eleanor did. The crack appeared in the 3rd year of my marriage, and it did not appear where I expected it. My father called me one afternoon and asked if I could come to his office. He said it quietly, and his voice had something in it that I had never heard before. Something careful. I went that same day. He sat me down, and he put a folder on the desk between us. He did not open it immediately. He looked at me for a moment first. The way parents look at you when they are about to say something they wish they did not have to say. Then he told me that over the past 18 months, his company had been losing contracts. Not dramatically, not all at once. Slowly, quietly. One by one, clients he had worked with for years had begun choosing other providers. Bids he submitted were being undercut by competitors, with numbers that should not have been possible unless someone knew what his bids were before they were submitted. Internal processes that took years to develop were showing up in the practices of rival firms. He had hired someone to look into it, he said. He opened the folder, and he showed me a list of names. 27 names. Every single person on that list had come to his company through a recommendation from Eleanor. I sat in my father's office for a very long time after he showed me that list. My father did not speak while I read through it. He gave me the time I needed. That is the kind of man he is. The investigation had taken 4 months. The person my father had hired was thorough and careful, and what she uncovered was methodical and deliberate, and had clearly been planned long before Nathan ever walked into that conference and found me. Eleanor, it turned out, was not simply a well-connected woman with a generous spirit toward job seekers. Eleanor's family had a competing logistics firm, a smaller one one that had been struggling for years to break into the level of contracts my father's company held, one that needed information and access and insider knowledge to do what they could not do on their own merits. The people she had placed inside my father's company were not random. They were positioned in specific departments: procurement, client relations, bidding, and contracts. Each of them had been quietly, consistently feeding information back. Contract details, client relationships, pricing structures, process documents that had taken years to develop. 27 people for 2 years. And I was the one who had opened the door for every single one of them. I drove home from my father's office that evening, and I sat in my car in the driveway for 45 minutes before I could make myself go inside. Nathan was in the kitchen when I walked in. He looked up and said something about dinner, and I looked at him and I thought, how much do you know? I did not sleep that night. I lay in the dark beside my husband, and I went through every memory I had of the past 4 years, looking for the things I had explained away. The times Eleanor and Nathan had spoken in lowered voices that stopped when I entered a room. The times Nathan had asked casual questions about my father's business that I had taken as interest and now reframed as something else entirely. The times Eleanor had asked follow-up questions about people she had referred, questions that at the time seemed like genuine care, and now seemed like something very different. I do not know with certainty how much Nathan knew. I want to be honest about that. I have never been able to establish it with complete certainty, and I have had to make peace with not knowing. What I do know is what happened when I confronted him. I told him everything the next morning. I put the folder my father had given me on the kitchen table. I told him about the investigation. I told him about the 27 names. I told him what his mother's family had been doing. And I told him that I had been the one who made it possible, without knowing it. Nathan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I did not know the details. Not, I did not know. I did not know the details. That distinction matters. I have thought about it many times since. I did not know the details is not the same as I had no idea. It is not the same as I am completely shocked. It leaves a door open that I could not close no matter how hard I tried. I asked him directly, did you know your mother was using me to get to my father's company? He did not answer. That silence was its own kind of answer. 2 days after my conversation with Nathan, I called Eleanor. I had thought about what I wanted to say for 2 days. I had written things down and crossed them out. I had rehearsed versions of this conversation in my head while I stood in the shower and drove to the grocery store and tried to eat meals I could not taste. In the end, I kept it very simple. I told her I knew. She was quiet for a moment. And then she said something that I will remember for the rest of my life. She said, Fiona, business is business. I hope you understand that this was never personal. Business is business. I had spent 4 years calling this woman family. I had sat at her table for holiday dinners. I had asked her advice about things that mattered to me. I had believed, genuinely believed, that she saw me as a daughter. Business is business. I did not respond. There was nothing to say to that. Nothing that would have mattered or changed anything or made me feel better. I ended the call, and I called a lawyer. The divorce took 7 months. I will not pretend it was easy.
It was one of the hardest things I have ever done. And not because I was still in love with Nathan by the end of it. By the time I filed, I had grieved the marriage thoroughly and completely. What made it hard was everything else.
The logistics, the conversations, the family members who reached out and asked if we had really tried, the well-meaning people who suggested counseling, as though the problem was communication rather than a fundamental betrayal I could not locate the floor of. Nathan did not fight the divorce. I do not know whether that was guilt or practicality or simply an acknowledgement that there was nothing left to fight for.
We divided what needed to be divided, and we signed what needed to be signed. And one morning, I walked out of a lawyer's office, and I was no longer someone's wife. I stood on the pavement outside, and I breathed in cold air, and I waited to feel something devastating. And what I felt instead was something I had not expected at all. I felt the particular quiet of a weight being lifted. Not happiness, not immediately, but space, room to breathe. The feeling of putting down something very heavy that you have been carrying so long you forgot it was not supposed to be yours. My father is not a man who lets things end badly if he can help it. He pursued every legal avenue available to him, and he pursued them carefully and thoroughly, with the same patience he brought to building the company in the first place. I will not go into every detail because some of it is still ongoing and some of it is not mine to share.
What I can tell you is that the 27 people were removed, every single one, that the information that had been taken was documented, and the clients who had been lost were contacted, and the conversations that needed to happen happened. Some of those clients came back, not all of them. Some damage cannot be completely undone, and my father understands that and has never once suggested otherwise.
Eleanor's family firm faces consequences that are still unfolding. My father has never blamed me. Not once, not in any form. Not even in the careful, indirect way that would have hurt the most. He sat me down early in all of this, and he said, "Alara, you trusted someone you had every reason to trust. That is not a character flaw. That is what it looks like to love people genuinely. The fault belongs to the people who used it."
I cried when he said that. The full kind of crying. The kind that comes from somewhere very deep. I am 30 years old, and I am divorced, and my father's company is rebuilding, and I am the most free I have ever felt in my adult life. I do not say that lightly. Freedom is not something I took for granted before all of this, but I understand it differently now. I understand that I had been living inside a story that someone else had written for me, and I had been so focused on making it work that I had not stepped back far enough to read what it actually said. I understand now that love can be used as a mechanism, that access, given generously and in good faith, can be treated as a resource, that the most dangerous manipulations are the ones that come dressed in warmth and family and the language of care. I also understand that none of that is a reason to stop being the kind of person who loves genuinely. It is a reason to be clearer, to pay attention to the things you explain away, to trust the quiet voice that notices something before your conscious mind is ready to name it. My father's company is still standing. He is still there every morning. He still knows his employees' names and their children's names, and he still shows up with the same steadiness that I grew up watching and did not fully understand until I saw what someone tried to do to it and could not. That company survived because he built it properly, on real foundations. And real foundations hold
even when everything else is trying to pull them down.
I think the same is true of people. My name is Fiona. I am 30 years old. My divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me. And that is my story. I spent 4 years inside a life that was built on something I did not know was there. When it came apart, I thought I was losing everything. I was actually getting everything back. Thank you for listening. This is Haely Stories. We will see you in the next one.